if you want a long career and you want to, be happy at the same time, that's the best way.
Welcome to the Sansum Warrior Mindset podcast with a very special guest on, Sarah Broadhead, a sports psychologist, worked with Team GB for 10 plus years and worked with athletics, and also was one of the directors of the Chimp Management with Professor Steve Peters. And I've also worked with Sarah in my Taekwondo career. So welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yes, very excited to talk to you, Sarah. Yeah. Yeah, Sarah, we do a lot about mindset, with our athletes and other people that we work with. So it's great to have you on. And you've done a lot of work with Damon and the team. And
I have. Yeah, I've heard lots about you as well.
Oh, hello.
It's great to actually meet you.
Oh, yeah, it's lovely to be. I've heard a lot about you as well. I almost felt I was living Damon's life with him, even though I was like 400 odd miles away. We spoke most days, and it was a really special time for him and the family, and what an amazing thing you do, Sarah. So, Sarah, do you work with athletes still?
I do, yeah. So I work with a women's football team. I work with a rugby team. I work with mountain bikers, some individual athletes across all different sports. So yeah, it's really good.
Good. And how did you get into it, Sarah? Tell us a little bit about yourself, so everyone just gets gets you, and what you've done.
Yeah. So I went to Manchester University and studied psychology, which was great. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, so I did a master's in business psychology, again at Manchester. So I did, after that, I worked in various kind of business roles, worked on a graduate scheme, went and did some like business coaching, all that kind of stuff. But my real passion is sport. So after doing that for a few years, I thought, I really want to get into sports psychology. So I had a friend that worked at British Cycling. So this was just after Beijing. And I heard a few athletes like Victoria Pendleton and Chris Hoy talking about this psychiatrist they were working with. And I was like, that sounds amazing. Like, I would love that job. So they were talking about Professor Steve Peters. So I said to my friend who worked at cycling, can you please get me his email? I just want to find out how you get into sport, how you make that transition, what it's like. And she gave me his PA, Jeff's email. So we were emailing back and forth. And I just got this email in my inbox going, Steve wants to know if you want a job at Taekwondo.
Nice.
And I was like, yes, that would be amazing. I don't know anything about sport, anything about Taekwondo. He said, I'll supervise you. So met with Gary, who was the performance director. I think he wasn't really given much choice. I think Steve said, you're having this person. So I was given like a 4-week trial, jumped straight in. I remember, I think my first one-to-one was with Tony Grisman.
Yeah, Tony.
And I was like, I do not know what I'm doing. But yeah, it was great. I loved it.
Obviously, you started in Taekwondo, and I know you've worked with athletics, golfers as well.
Golf.
Yeah, golf. Yeah. And for me, through my time in Taekwondo, I understood how closely you work with Jade Jones, and I knew the relationship between, you've got the athlete, the coaches that are teaching them the Taekwondo, and also the psychologist. And I know sometimes athletes don't utilize it as much, but I knew the relationship you and Jade had was so close. How was that journey with Jade? And obviously you were a massive part in her winning 2 Olympic gold medals.
It was a great journey. I think going to London, I think there was like a group of staff. So you'll know, like people like Lee and Pars, and like none of us had been to Olympic Games before. I think we were excited, but we almost didn't know. None of us, I think, knew really what to expect. And Jade never been to Olympics. I don't think she was expected to win, was she?
No, not at that stage.
Kind of a bit of, not at that stage. So yeah, I think we just kind of just approached it as a good challenge, and we all got on really well. We all enjoyed it. I think I kind of balanced out the relationship with Paul. So he's very intense. He was her coach at the time. So I probably gave her a bit of balance from that intense side of it. But yeah, I think we just kind of built that relationship. It takes time, doesn't it? You kind of have to build that trust, and you have to be there for that person when they're struggling or having good and bad times. So yeah, it was a brilliant journey. I loved it.
Was it about the relationship more than anything else, Sarah? I know obviously all the knowledge you've got and all the rest of it, but how important is the relationship between somebody like you and a coach or a player?
Oh, it's vital. I think if they don't trust you and you don't have that relationship where they feel they can be honest and open and that you're not judging them. I think that's really important. They have to feel that they can tell you anything and that they're not going to feel judged or that you're going to understand where they're coming from. I think that's the most important thing.
I think often, even with coaches and athletes, sometimes because of certain, you don't want people to have certain opinions, but sometimes you'll withhold how you feel. And even with the coach on the day, you want to be honest with them, but you don't want to create any negativity if you're a bit nervous or for some reason you're just a bit scared. Sometimes when I competed, most of the time I'd be in the zone. But then I remember one tournament I went there, and the night before, I just had such a strange feeling, like I don't want to compete tomorrow. I remember sitting there, I think it was Switzerland, and I don't know why, but if your coach is with you, you probably wouldn't say. But like you said, Sarah, to be open and honest and have that trust with a psychologist and an athlete is a massive fundamental part of being able to tell them, I suppose, how you truly feel as well. And I think what's interesting is when people start in sports at a low level, they have all the fears and the nerves and all the certain things that are coming into your head. But then when they perceive elite fighters and Olympic champions, they think they don't have them. But sometimes, as you know, Sarah, it could be even more so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's why I think Steve Peters' model was really helpful, because he would almost separate out. So there's this part of your brain that he called the chimp that would give you fears, anxieties, and that is completely normal and understandable. And I think some athletes found that helpful because they could go, oh, my chimp is thinking this, and it kind of detached you a little bit from it, and it was easier to talk about it. Like, not everyone liked that approach, but for some people they found it really helpful.
And the book, The Chimp Paradox, Sarah, amazing book, and there's another one now, isn't there, for kids?
Yeah.
Why do you think? I mean, I just love the way it's written, and I just get it. What do you think made that book so successful? Was it because it was so simple? I've read psychology books and stuff like this, and after about an hour, I'm rinsed. But that one was just so easy to read. What do you think the secret to that was?
I think that was it. I think that it was easy to read, simple, but also it's accurate as well. Actually, people resonate with it because they're like, I can see that I have these thoughts and feelings that I don't necessarily, another part of my brain doesn't agree with, and it just made sense. I think it just made sense.
How would you do for people listening and watching that don't know the Chimp Paradox? How would you summarize it to someone, Sarah, that has no idea?
So it's described. So the brain is very complicated, but as we said, it simplifies it down into 3 parts. So you've got your chimp part, which is the part that wants to keep you alive, wants to keep you accepted in a social group. So it's why we care about what people think. We want to look good. We want to perform well, and we can have fears and worries. Then we've got our human part, which is the more kind of logical, rational part that has perspective. And then we have an automatic computer part. So that's where our pre-learnt behaviours, our automatic responses sit. So for you, Damon, like coming into Taekwondo, you'd never done Taekwondo before, had you?
No.
So you didn't have anything probably in your computer. So you had to practice, learn, train to get things into that automatic computer part. Then once you had those, you then had to manage your chimp part, because that could be the bit that might sabotage you or throw you off if you got too worried or too nervous. So it's just understanding the 3 parts and how you can manage them.
Yeah, I think what I've found with psychologists and talking to people like yourself, Sarah, and Robbie, who I work closely with, Robbie Anderson, I found it like you guys, even now, although I know the Chimp Paradox a lot, sometimes when you slip into chimp mode, sometimes it takes me a while to then check myself. Whereas when I speak to people that have done it so long, they instantly were like, oh, no, I'm about to go into chimp mode and I'm going to diffuse it. And I think even in life and jobs and relationships, like I always say to people, if you're in a relationship, any kind of relationship, and you're having a disagreement, you're trying to resolve the disagreement whilst you're in that chimp part of your brain, which has been defensive and aggressive, and you're trying to resolve, whereas there's no point. So I think it's interesting to understand how your brain works, and then the more you research and the more you study it, you can check yourself straight away. And I think that would cause a lot of people to have an easier life, I think, if they could check themselves when they're going into chimp mode. We've all been there.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting, Sarah. You know, I do a lot of training in different fields, and one of the fields I work in is security at quite a high level, and mainly in the close protection kind of world, bodyguard, as people call it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you're working in that particular job in maybe a dangerous place, let's say, what I find is because of the pressure of that place you're in and the environment, when you feel the chimp kicking in, you'll check it instantly. I mean, instantly, because if you don't and you get it wrong, you're going to die. So there's a big pressure on you, and you understand this. And then I've seen people who work in those kind of environments, and they're really cool, and nothing phases them, and people can be screaming and shouting at them, and there's just nothing there. And then you see them in normal life, and it's absolutely the opposite. You know, they can snap like that, and you know. But so it's interesting that you could switch it on in certain parts of your life, and in other parts of your life, I don't know what it is. What is it, Sarah? Why is it we can do that so well?
It's interesting. I've read a couple of books of people that have been in those sorts of really extreme environments, and exactly as you've described, they have the ability to manage it in that environment, but then they come out into the civilian world and they really find it hard. And maybe it's back to that. That's what they've been trained in. So that in their automatic computer part, they've been so well drilled and trained in that specific environment and how you manage, and that if you don't manage your chimp, then you'll be dead. They're so well practiced in it. And then they come into a different environment and they haven't practiced it, or actually they're missing bits from the civilian world that they got in that other environment. So maybe they're missing the adrenaline or the challenge, and actually they're struggling because they're missing a lot of things that they got in the other environment. I know a lot of people that struggle without that camaraderie or the adrenaline, or it's the same in sport, isn't it? Like you almost can't recreate it outside of sport. Like you miss all of that. Yeah, you kind of practiced and trained to deal with and thrive in that environment.
Yes, so
it's
true.
Interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. This is an interesting one. This question might go well, or it might just fall flat on its face. Have you watched? Are you ready for this? Have you watched the program Ted Lasso?
I've seen bits of it, but I haven't watched loads of it. I've heard of it.
Okay. That's fallen flat. I was going to ask you a really cool question about it, but because, like, Sarah, if you'd watch it, please. The next time we speak, I'm going to ask you some really cool questions about it.
I will.
It was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's about a football manager, and he knew nothing about football, and on it goes. It's quite amusing, but there's some really cool psychology in it. And I think if you watched it, I think you'd really like it. So
I do need to watch it.
You need to watch it, yeah.
On your list, Sarah.
Yeah. So, Sarah, say for example, Sarah, you're going to, let's say, a sports club, a high-profile sports club. It could be anything: football, golf, football or rugby, a team sport, and the team isn't performing well. Okay, and you go in there, and because I know you've studied this and you've done a lot of this. What do you think? Because sometimes it's just a fine tune, isn't it, that they need? What do you think the majority of time is it in teams and team sports that prevent them being as good as they can be? What generally is it? Is it like a general 2 or 3 things that you would look for first?
Okay. So I think it depends a little bit whether you're going into a sport where it's a group of individuals like Taekwondo was, or it's a team sport. But for both of them, I think one of the first things you look at is the culture and the environment. So Damon, you'll know from Taekwondo, the atmosphere that's created. Do people feel like safe to be themselves? Do they feel supported? Do they feel challenged, but in a supportive way? Have they got good role models of what high performance looks like? So I think culture environment's always a good place to start, because like what behaviors are being encouraged, what behaviors are being challenged, how do people communicate with each other, are people encouraged to see things as a challenge? And I think that's what we did pretty well at Taekwondo. It'll be interesting to see what you think, Damon, but where we kind of encourage people to just go and try and be brave. And I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the same. I think It's very similar to, we coach our team up here, and they've only been doing it seriously for a couple of years, and they will be elite in time. But the one thing we found with the team sports is to install an identity. And I think, for example, it could be fearlessness or like you said, cared for and not judged or supported. So I think, I felt the same in the team. And I think although you've got individual sports, but when you train as a team, having that team camaraderie is key, because it's a tricky one, because you are internally competing with your friends. But I feel like some teams don't celebrate each other's wins, whereas when you've got that friendship, that trust, and when you're supporting your teammate, you feel more I used to feel more nervous watching my teammates fight than I did fighting, because you care for them. And
did you?
Yeah, I did. The ones I was really close to. So I used to hate watching, and when my brothers are competing now, they're only young, and I'm dreading watching them when they're older, because it's so much easier going in there. But I feel like, that team camaraderie, and there's a show on it about an African culture called Ubuntu, and I don't know if you've heard about that, Sarah. It's the theory is, if I am good, you are good. So if you're in a training session and one athlete's not doing well, then you'd get behind them to push them, because if they're going to perform better, it's going to increase your performance in the sparring or the training. So I felt that in Taekwondo quite a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think a lot of teams
we had that. Do you remember like the -68 project, like where Steve Jennings was like, right, we've got this group, like we're going to push each other. The aim is to qualify, and the standard rose because they saw it as a 68 project. Even like you said, they were competing against each other. They actually all made each other better. It was really good.
Yeah, that's there was about, I think at the time there was maybe 4 or 5 people in the same weight category. And like you said, the sparring on a Friday, the standard of that one category, it was brutal because it was it's that internal competition. And it's interesting. I spoke to Martin Stamper the other day, and when the team's getting a bit smaller, people would be selected to go to fight at majors because there's only one person in that division. Whereas when there was loads of high level people in that one weight division, to get selected, I remember you check your emails, and to be selected to go to a major was like you'd already won. And then it was a big thing. So I think in team sports or individual sports like martial arts, where you're training as a team, to create that competitiveness in the sessions, like you said, bring the war to the gym, and then when you go to the war, there's no difference. And I feel like at that stage, when I'd go to sparring, you'd have the nervous feeling before you went to training. But again, it's not nice to feel that feeling, but to get
used to it.
Exactly. And so when you go to competition, it's no different. And to know that within the same gym in Manchester, you've got 3 of the best people in the world fighting you every day. It's a real confidence booster, and obviously it makes your performance.
It gives you confidence. Yeah.
Sarah, say for example, you've got an athlete in a sport, and they're kind of maybe at maybe national level or just coming up through the ranks, and they want to progress through their chosen sport. What are the sort of like three or 4 things you would, if you could give them a gift of something that they could do to improve their performance using, the things that you've learned? What would they be? What would be like the most important that they'd have to do, and then another couple of tips?
I think having seen like people progress right up to the top level, I think it's being able to like commit and do what you need to do to progress and be at the top level, but still have a bit of perspective, or that your whole identity and self-worth isn't just based on results, because then you just don't enjoy it as much. You're probably going to burn out. If your results aren't going well, which they won't always go well, then you're going to really struggle. So trying to see it as a challenge rather than a threat. And I think, Damon, you got good at doing this, where you were like, I'm actually going to enjoy this process, and because otherwise it's just like a roller coaster, isn't it? And you just put so much pressure on yourself. So I think, working hard and committing, but also enjoying it, having other things in your life, not basing your whole self-worth on, am I performing well on the mat, for example. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do, but that's, if you want a long career and you want to be happy at the same time. That's the best way.
Yeah, that's
I like that.
yeah, that's a great point, that, Sarah. And I think over the years, I found it quite interesting because when you're speaking to someone like, what is the perfect athlete? Then the perfect athlete lives and breathes it, does nothing else but obsess over the sport. Nothing else in their life comes first. And I always thought it's called the satellite technique, Sarah, the satellite technique, where you go into a satellite and you zip up from where you are you're in a competition, and you look down on everything and you realize it's not the end of the world. It's not the be all and end all. This one little bubble I'm in, even if it's a world championships, it's just a game. I'm going to have fun and smile. And that way you can avoid getting into chimp mode and you can access all your information in the computer using the chimp model. So, and I've seen many people over the years that they've done everything perfectly, but because it is everything to them, they're in a fight, first round, they get kicked in the head, and it's like, oh my God, this is all crumbling. And then the anxiety.
The world has ended.
Yeah. So it's a real tricky one when, I've always said the same. You have to have a balance and you have to commit and try, but also just put it into perspective, and it avoids you from going into chimp mode.
Yeah.
How about when you've been working away in the war zones you've worked? Would you say similar?
Yeah, it is. It's I see that kind of work and top class athletes, top class business people, anybody in the elite in their field. They've all got very similar traits, and you've all got to look after your mental health exactly the same. And we're big on affirmations, Sarah. I don't know if it's something that you're into, but I've done them most of my life. Having discovered this, it changed my life years and years and years ago. And so we're really big into that for the athletes. Is that something that you would say is valuable for a young athlete coming up to establish what exactly they want and visualize where they're going to be?
Yeah, I think visualization and positive self-talk is really helpful. I think, again, it's that balance of, it's like with the threat part of the brain, the chimp part, sometimes you need to say, I'm worried about this, I've got this fear. But then once you've kind of dealt with that, then you can shift to like the positive bit. So I think what a lot of people miss out is they try and ignore the worries and the fears and the negativity, because they think, it's just going down into a negative place. Whereas once we've kind of understood the worries and fears, we've answered them, we've reassured that part of the brain, then we can go to the kind of positive self-talk or positive affirmations.
Yeah, it's. I was reading as well, Sarah, recently, that when you say I call them affirmations, but it's all the same, isn't it? But when you're saying your affirmations and you say them and you visualize it with such clarity and such strength of thought, that it releases the chemicals in your body that you would get if you were actually doing it. So you're getting the payback of the feeling, of the oxytocin, the dopamine, before you actually do it. And
visualization is so powerful. It really is. And I've worked with athletes that have been either injured or say during COVID, like I worked with some mountain bikers, and they couldn't ride the tracks that they were going to be racing on. So they did loads of visualizing riding it how they wanted to, like being in the starter gate, focusing on their breathing, calming themselves down. And they said when they actually got to the track, it was so much more comfortable, and they clicked into it straight away because they're like, my brain is already kind of used to it. So it's really powerful.
How interesting is that? It's even for myself when I had the hip surgeries, and I shouldn't have come back in time. I came back silly quick, but it was to go to the World Championships. So every night I do visualization at nighttime, and it was annoying because your legs start twitching and you can't sleep. But for some reason I like to do it at night. But that whole period I didn't have much preparation, so on paper I wasn't ready to go. But I'd already relived everything and I'd already visualized everything. So when I've competed, I was really sharp. So I think it's a good one for you to explain, Sarah, is when someone's injured, a lot of people, and you've said the same to me, Sarah, I like to base my confidence on my training. And Sarah used to say, it's good to do that. And like you said, you build your confidence on your results. But if your training can't go right because of an injury, or you have a bad performance, then you're then relying on that. So if that's taken away, what do you have? So if someone's injured, Sarah, or someone's had a couple of bad performances, what would you say to them for them not to continue that, just because it can snowball?
Yeah, it can. So one thing you can do is rewatch or rethink about a fight or a game that you were happy with. So that again, so if we think how the brain works, we've got connections in the brain. And when we're physically doing something or imagining doing something, it's using the same pathways in the brain. So obviously physically doing something is the ideal, but if we can't because we're injured, we're still going to be using the same pathway. So if we reimagine or think about doing it well, or like watching ourselves doing it well or imagining doing it well, we're just priming that part of the brain, and it's just giving you something positive to think about. So yeah, even if you've had a couple of bad performances, it's reminding yourself, I do know what to do. My computer, my automatic part knows what to do. I've probably just got to manage my chimp part, but by picturing and imagining doing it how I want to, I'm priming my brain ready for next time. And then it's going, right, what things do I need to focus on? So what's the plan? What's going to give me the best chance of fighting how I want to fight? We did this a lot, didn't we? Like, focus on your plan. What are the key points? Like, not too detailed, but we had like 2 or 3 words, didn't we?
Yeah.
That you would focus on. And that hopefully was helpful.
Yeah, very helpful, Sarah. Really helpful. Yeah, the stuff that we've worked together, and I've worked with yourself, Robbie, and the Chimp team, and yeah, I bought into it. Not every athlete does, and it's almost it's up to you to get on board. But what's interesting is sometimes you know the answers. You might know all the answers, but you still don't implement them. You know all the information, and you can. I felt sometimes if I was, I don't know, perform bad or is a bad tournament, I just ignore it, and then I don't need psychology. I know it all, but it's because you're just avoiding it because you don't want to address it. It's so it's so interesting. It's so interesting how that works.
Yeah, avoiding is a normal human thing, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard to face it, so we just avoid it. Like, that's pretty normal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, Sarah. Yeah, the avoidance technique, and also blaming everything else on why this has happened. Blaming your coach, the referee, the whole thing, and rather than taking responsibility. Hey, and that's a big one for people in life, isn't it? We're not taught at school.
I think people fall into different. No, some people I think fall into different categories. Like, some people always blame themselves. So no matter what happens, it's like, oh, because I wasn't good enough and I'm rubbish. And like, even if something was outside of an influence that was a factor, and then you get people that don't take any responsibility and it's all external. So we want a little bit in the middle, don't we? Like, we don't want to completely like blame ourselves for everything and think that we're rubbish, but we don't want to blame the world.
Yes, it's a balance, I suppose.
It is, and I suppose it's through a period of education and getting people to understand their own thoughts and how it all works, isn't it? To get the edge really on their competitors. It could be in business, it could be in anything, couldn't it? And for coaches as well, understanding this, it allows them to be a better leader, because that's what a good coach is, isn't it? A leader, generally an alpha leader, whether it's male or female. And it's getting them to understand how it all works, but not just the actual sport, the psychology of the team. And you mentioned it before, Sarah, and when I speak about this high performance team stuff, and I like to draw a parallel to kind of military teams where everybody thinks it's like macho and all the rest of it. And it is, but the trust in that team and the love for each other is insane. I mean, where people would literally die for each other. And that's why the teams are so good, that they have that balance in the team. I don't know, they're all individuals, but together they are super, super strong. And I suppose that's what we're trying to achieve in any team, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's, like you said, the trust, but you kind of have to be it's a bit of a buzzword at the moment, but like vulnerable, like you have to be vulnerable with each other. And we, as a staff team, we did quite a lot of work before London, and it's quite uncomfortable sometimes because you kind of have to get used to giving each other feedback and being quite honest. But that's how you build that trust and able to be vulnerable with each other.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it. That
it is, yeah. And I think when you go through adversity, as you do as an elite anything in this world, when the going gets tough or the going gets good, sometimes you get a glimpse of what that person is really like, don't you? When the pressure's on in that pressure cooker, that's when you find out what is really inside here, don't you? And it's it can be quite shocking at times, can't it? When you see something, you're like, whoa, I did not expect that. And at that moment in time, when you see that, you change your opinion of that person, don't you? Either for good or bad.
Yeah, I think you don't get much more highly pressured in sport than an Olympic final. You've had someone that's trained 4 years, but probably 8 years, 12, like that. It's down to that one day, and it's not just the individual athlete that feels it. Like the funding for the program is, I know you probably would have felt this, Damon, as well, that you don't feel just pressure for yourself, but you feel pressure to perform for the coach and for the team and the program, because if we don't win medals, we don't get any funding. And that's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose sometimes it's interesting because there's pressure obviously throughout the whole staff, and there's pressure on you as an athlete, there's pressure on the coach, there's pressure on the psychologist, there's pressure on the performance director to secure the money. But I suppose it's knowing the pressure, but not putting that on someone. And I remember, you'll know, Sarah, I remember in Mexico, we went to the World Championships and it just didn't go well. And they splashed out and we got the coolest chill room. It was like, we went to town because we were really, really primed to do well.
Is that when they rigged up that thing in the gym with the high?
Yeah, that's when I'll tell you a funny story about the altitude tent. But it just didn't go well. The people were losing. On the last day, I was the last one to get on there, and I was a bit unfortunate. I was just about to get in the quarters, and I got a toe that touched. I had a long beard at the time, and a toe touched my beard, and I should have won the fight. And the last second, it was like the replay of the toe doing this. But on that day, I felt the pressure from everyone. Like, you are the last hope, and I was like, whoa! Like so. Although there are pressures, sometimes it's to not really. I don't think it's healthy to sometimes put that on someone. And I suppose as an athlete, you have your own pressures. And I suppose people don't realize it's such a high performance world. If you don't perform in a couple of tournaments, your money may get dropped down because it's tiered funding. So you might be on A class and you might have a family and you're paying your rent or your mortgage. And if you have one more bad tournament, your money's going to get dropped and you might struggle. You might have to leave the team. Or you might know that some athletes have sometimes they're told you've got one more chance and then you're going to be kicked out. So it's fortunately in my career, I always perform well in the big ones. Towards the end, I had a few months of bad performances, but some people how would you help someone, Sarah? Because I know some people don't perform well. And like you've said to me before, the current doesn't affect the future. So if you've had a bad performance in your head, when you step on the mats again, you think there's a higher chance of it happening again and then again. So how would you help someone with that, Sarah, that's in a stage of their performances not going so well and it just snowballing and getting worse and worse and worse?
So on that, there's a pressure or there's a consequence or I need to do well. I guess it's maybe the same for you in like that military world. Like even if, let's say, like the ultimate consequence is it is literally life and death. So if you don't perform, you could lose your life. That's a reality. That's a consequence. But what's going to give you the best chance of getting the outcome that you want? So it goes back to plan and process. So we've got to kind of acknowledge, yes, there's that consequence, there's that outcome. My chimp might be scared or worried or fearful. But if I stay in that place, that isn't going to help me. I've got to switch to my plan, my process, my training, what I can do about this. So that's what we try and help people with, is like drill it in training. Like you've spent hours and hours in the gym. That's what we want you to go out and do and focus on. We've got to learn to manage the worries and the fears, but we've got to shift to that plan and process.
Yeah, trust it. Hey, and also Sarah as well. I was interested about that thing in Mexico, and I've seen this both ways. That you've got like the last athlete, the last man standing going out, for example, and everybody in the team, the coaches from the performance directors, their chimps are out of control, and it's that. So I suppose when I work with some teams, I kind of talk about this with them, and they call it your invisible PR, isn't it? The things you do when no one is watching, but everybody sees that little bit, and that's the true you, isn't it? So you've got your team going, the pressure's on, and the manager's sat there with his head in his hands, and the team see it. Just one member of the team sees it, and the whole team goes down because, well, he doesn't think we're going to win, or she doesn't think we're going to win, or just a shake of the head, or something like that. And it's the chimp inside, isn't it, going, this isn't going to work. And then the athletes at the end of the day, or the performers doing whatever, if they feel that, just knocks their game straight away, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that as a staff team at Taekwondo, hopefully, I think we got better at that, of kind of being supportive and not putting pressure on people as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
That was always the aim anyway. That was always the...
Yeah, I saw it at a World Championships one time. It was a junior World Championships in Croatia, I think. And the British team were doing terribly. All the best athletes had got out, hadn't won anything. It was just horrendous. And I was with a young girl from our academy then. It's quite a few years ago. And she went on and she won gold. And then the next 4 athletes that competed next, each one won gold from the British team. And they weren't the strongest athletes on the team either. It's just that they just believed, well, she could do it. Yeah. We are now great Britain, because she's just made it great. We were just Britain before this. Yeah. And now they went out and it just went bang, 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 bang on one day only. And then the next day it didn't go so well. But
I think we saw that in the academy, didn't we? Where there was a point where we just got used to going to tournaments and people medaling, because it was just like, well, yeah, of course we're capable of getting medals. And then it just snowballs in a positive way, doesn't it? Because you just like, yeah, of course we can beat Korea, of course we can beat whoever.
Success breeds success, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's I always find it so interesting when someone in sport is almost unbeatable, but then when as soon as they lose once, everyone's world, they've seen a loss, so now it's now believable, and generally they'll be beat. They'll be beat again. So it's as we all know, especially you, Sarah, it's the power of the mind, and it's it's fascinating. You'll know more than us, Sarah, but over the past 15 years, and especially in the bigger sports and businesses, I feel like the mindset and psychology has really started to break through to loads of different sports. You've probably seen that.
Yeah, it's loads more popular. There's loads of podcasts about it. There's like people just a lot more aware of everything to do with the mind, and I think people are much more open to it than they ever would have been. I think it's brilliant. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it is. Let me see, probably about 8 years ago, I was working with a very, very professional team. I won't say what sport it's in because I don't want to give it away. And I lived with this team for 3 months, and there was one member of the team who was the best player in the world in the position, and they had to drop him because he kept making a mistake, and it was losing the games for this team. And I spoke to the director of this particular sport, and I said, "Well, what are you doing about it? He's making this mistake. I see it. What are you doing about it as a team?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "There's obviously something in his brain. It just needs to be fixed. It might be something he did as a kid, a youth foot, whatever it was, right?" And I said, "He needs some psychology. He needs some help with this, and you need to find out what the problem is." And I said, "You can fix it." and you have the best player in that position on your team again. And he said, oh, they won't do that. It's to, what did he say? It's to, I'm trying to find the word.
I know you're trying to say that without
being rude. And
we get it.
We know what you're saying, but the sport wasn't ready for it then. And that was 2015, so not long ago. And that sport now has changed. I've seen that sport increase in terms of talent and performance since they've been working with people like you, Sarah.
Well, if you think about your brain, your mind, it controls everything. It's your sleep, it's your personality, it's your mind, it's everything. Like, I don't know how you can look at performance without looking at the mind. And I think the best coaches understand how people tick. Like, I think, I've seen some coaches that are like better than the psychologists. Like, they just get people, they just know how to get the best out of them.
With the coaches, Sarah, it's I've always thought this, because the coach, you interact with the coach as an athlete quite a lot. The athlete's going to psychology, but what you started to do and we started doing the team is often the coach would come and sit in on it. And I think that's a really good thing, because your coach might not, I've seen over the years, you'll have seen it over the years, where the coach maybe doesn't buy into it. So I think it's interesting, and same as the workplaces, the athlete needs to work on their mindset, but equally the coach, it's
even more.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's really good sometimes to have them three-way meetings, because I can be talking to Sarah about how I want to feel on fight day. And if I have these 3 words of how I want to feel, calm, dominate, and fearless, for example, and then the coach is not in line with what I think, and then maybe they're creating an energy that's throwing me off. So I think it's really important, and it was important to me, is for the coach to be on board with how I want to be addressed on competition day. Because maybe I'm a calm person, so I like to laugh and joke, cracking jokes until it's the last round, 2 minutes left, then jump on the mats and fight. Whereas if my coach is really intense, and it throws me a little bit. So whereas the opposite,
super serious.
Whereas sometimes you'll know, Sarah, that the athlete needs that seriousness, because they need someone to be intense with them. So I think it's important, and that's down to honesty, is understanding as a coach, each one of your athletes, players or fighters, and team members, each one you have to address differently, because they have different requirements.
Yeah, the best coaches can adapt like really well. And the best sessions I had were when it was with the athlete and the coach. They were always the best.
You see this sometimes in a good industry to look at, and I love looking at this industry, in the sales industry. So we get high pressure environment, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's an expectation in the industry. So you go in, you have all these super cool salespeople who are extremely good at the job. You get the boss there, or the owner comes in with the big stick, and it's like, it's fear. If you don't do it, you're going to get sacked. And it's really, so they have a high turnover of staff, high turnover sickness, and all this stuff. And then you go to another sales company who maybe are at the upper end of sales, possibly. And the person who's running the team creates an amazing environment where everybody feels cared for, loads of top cover, no hidden agendas, and they have a low turnover of staff, funny old thing, no stress, fantastic sales. That's the key person.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying at the start, didn't it, about the environment and the culture. Like, if you get, as a team, as an organization, if you get that right, the rest kind of trickles down from that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's true. And like you said, then I've said the same. Recruitment and sales, it's such a high turnover of staff, and they earn big money, some recruitment companies. And I always think, why don't you have a psychologist that works in the company?
Yes.
Because it's like my sister, your daughter, she was into sales all her life, and there was so many similarities with performance of an athlete.
So incredible.
You get a couple of deals in. What happens next? You get more deals in, because when you're on the call, you're not operating in fear, because you've got the money you need. And then equally, when you have a bad day or a bad week, it can turn into a bad month. So it's so similar. That industry, so
similar.
Yeah, Sarah, you should work into the sales area. You could change that industry for forever.
It's true. I'm sure some of them do, to be fair.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they do. Yeah,
I'm sure some of them do. Sarah, I'm going to ask you a couple of interesting questions. So,
just to finish off,
you've worked with Olympic champions, you've worked with world champions in multiple different sports. What would you say? Would you say there's a theme with that? The very special people. So, is there a theme with how their minds work? Do you think it's a natural thing? I know obviously their physical skill comes into play, but is there any certain attributes where you've thought they have a theme here?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot. So I've put a section in my book about it of like traits of successful athletes, and I kind of debated and thought about it quite a lot. And I think you've got to have hard work. Like there's just no way around being successful without being a hard worker and able to push through. And I think sometimes the misconception is that as an elite athlete, you're always motivated. Like you're just not, are you? Like there's days when you get up and you're like, I really do not want to go to the gym. It's cold, it's dark, but it's just their ability to commit and turn up every day, work hard, like for years on end. Like you look at people like Jade and Bianca, and that, like, you just the commitment they've shown is amazing, isn't it? Like to be still going, pushing hard, winning medals, like that's amazing. So yeah, hard work ethic, 100%. You've got to have it.
And consistency. Hey,
not just working hard for a bit, it's over time.
Yeah, a lot of people are in it for the fast win, aren't they? In everything in life. A couple of quick fire questions to finish off, if you don't mind, so we can get to know you a bit better. But you mentioned your book. When did your book come out?
Show us your book, Sarah. Put the book on the screen. Let's see.
We'll put a link to the book so everyone can
Performance Drive, Sarah Broadhead.
Right. Yeah.
Sarah, that is now on my Christmas list. I will be getting that. I will be reading that book at Christmas Day.
Great.
Couple of quick fire questions. What's your favourite food?
Pizza.
Pizza.
I
like pizza. We had pizza the other night.
Yeah, I don't mind pizza.
What kind of pizza?
Oh, it could be anything. You know, when people say, if you had to eat one meal for the rest of your life, like I could just eat pizza every day.
Pizza, wow. We spent a lot of time in Sicily, and the pizzas there are just
Sicily's lovely.
insane. What's the scariest thing you've ever done?
I found doing a parachute jump. That was pretty scary.
Wow.
I've always wanted
That's
to
That's pretty high up there on the list.
Yeah.
Parachute jump. Respect for charity. Did you do a charity jump, or did you just jump?
No, I was just on holiday.
Oh, that.
I was just on holiday in New Zealand.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, you're like strapped to someone, aren't you? And I think if I hadn't have been attached to this person, I wouldn't have done it. But you've got no choice, have you? So.
No, you're going out when they go.
You're going out. Mm-hmm.
You're going.
What's your favourite movie?
Oh, that's an impossible question. I don't think I can answer. I've got a few like classic ones like Dirty Dancing, Top Gun, their kind of things. But I don't know if I've got one.
Nothing that springs to mind, no.
A couple of good films, Dirty Dancing.
No, a few.
Oh, some great films there, yeah.
I probably like all the 80s films. I love all the 80s films. Show my age, but
I love the 80s films, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and all that. I like all
the
80s films. What's the next?
Next one, last one.
Yeah, they are the best.
To date, what's your biggest achievement to date, do you feel?
Probably writing the book, I would say, because I think again, like the commitment bit, like there's days when I didn't want to write, but I did, and I wrote it, like kept writing, and also like managing, like you're putting yourself out there, aren't you? Like when you write a book, like it kind of feels like a bit of a you're exposing your views and your thoughts, and so I'd say that's probably one of the proudest things. I've always wanted to write a book from when I was really young, so it's probably one of my proudest things.
Congratulations, Sarah.
Congratulations,
Dad. I'm the only one without a book, so I need to crack on.
Yeah, it is a bit weird, isn't it? And it still freaks me out now. I released my book just after lockdown, and it's kind of a biography, and
I'll have to get it.
And
you can trade.
We'll trade books, and
we'll trade.
And I meet people that I've never met before, and they know all about me. All about my life and everything.
Sounds
and I'm
strange.
like, whoa, that is weird. And it still freaks me out now.
Yeah, I need to catch up with you guys. I need to plan a book. Last one, Sarah. So for for us and for yourself, we know about the mindset, and there'll be people that are listening and they want to excel in their sport. It could be martial arts, it could be any sport, but they've never tapped into understanding the brain. So what advice would you give them? Because some people, they don't know where to go, what to look at, how to do it themselves. And I know it's a big process, but what advice would you give someone that wants to emulate the likes of Jade Jones and, the top golfers, the top footballers, and all the elite people you've worked with, for them to get to that next level? What advice would you give to them?
I think books are a good start. So they could check out Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters. They could look at my book. There's lots of sport psychology books out there. There's loads of podcasts. So if you put into into a search engine, like podcasts or books about sport psychology, there's loads out there. So they're probably a good place. That's probably where I would recommend starting. Or even it doesn't have to be structured like that. Just start to have conversations with your coaches about the mind, or how can I get the most out of my mind, or ask people that you respect in your sport, how they do it, get tips from people that you think manage themselves well. I think that's always helpful, because then they're role models that you can get advice from. I think that's always a good place to start.
Yeah, I think it's great advice. And I think it's just an interesting point as well, that having worked, Sarah, with the best of the best, you'll know yourself, people think that once they get to that level, all these worries stop, all these fears stop, and they can just go and perform. But as you know, Sarah, we've seen people having meltdowns that are world champions, the minutes before fighting. So it's interesting to know that you've got to keep on top of the mindset. When you're doing well, it's easy because it's you're doing well, and sometimes you drop off it when you're doing well. But that's a very good place to start, because some people are reactive, and when things aren't going right, they then go, right, I need to look at the psychologist. Whereas you've always said as well, it's the best to keep on top of it when you're doing well as well.
Exactly. It's like going to the gym. You don't go, right, I'm fit now, I don't need to go to the gym. It's a lifelong thing, isn't it? It's the same with your managing your mind and your brain. You've got to keep working on it. You've got to keep figuring out what beliefs are helpful or not helpful, or working out how to manage your emotions. It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah, it's true. How true is that? And there's a great analogy as well about going to the gym. When you're fit, you don't just stop, do you? And it's very important to keep on to the mindset. No, unfortunately, it'd be nice if you just get to that level and you maintain it. Yeah. But it's a shame. It's a shame it doesn't work that way.
The more you do, the more you need it, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, but thank you, Sarah, for your time. We had
it's brilliant.
We had a good chat. And for the people that are listening, get Sarah's book. She'll improve your performance as she has to myself and the other members of the Chimp team. So thanks for coming on the show, Sarah. And we will.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm sure it'll help a lot of people as well, and inspire people to delve into the mind more and understand that once they can work on that as much as their bodies in training, then they can get to the likes of a double Olympic champion like Jade Jones and all the high profile people you've worked with.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah.
Definitely. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.